The rain fell like shards of glass that November night, each drop a reminder that the world could be mercilessly cold. Through the deluge, a figure stumbled forward, a girl no more than 17, her threadbare jacket soaked through, clutching a bundle wrapped in what had once been a blue blanket. Inside that bundle, a baby whimpered, and with each cry, the girl whispered promises she had no power to keep. She had been walking for hours, searching for shelter that didn't exist, for kindness in a city that had turned its back. Her feet bled inside shoes held together by duct tape and determination. But she didn't stop. She couldn't. Because the baby, this tiny life that wasn't even hers, depended on her. Maya Rodriguez had been homeless for 8 months, but she'd been invisible for much longer. After aging out of the foster care system at 18 with nothing but a garbage bag of belongings and a heart full of hope that quickly withered, she'd learned that survival meant making yourself small, unnoticed, unremarkable. She'd learned which subway stations stayed warmest at night, which restaurants threw out bread that was still edible, which streets to avoid after dark. She'd learned that most people looked right through homeless teenagers, especially brown girls with tangled hair and haunted eyes. The baby had come to her 2 days ago in the most unexpected way. Maya had been sitting outside a convenience store, trying to warm her hands around a cup of coffee someone had left half finished on a bench, when she heard the screaming. A young woman, couldn't have been more than 20, burst out of a nearby apartment building, her eyes wild with something darker than fear. Drugs, Maya recognized immediately. She'd seen that look too many times in the foster homes, in the streets, in the mirror of her own mother before the state took her away. Take her, the woman had shrieked, shoving the infant toward Maya. I can't do this anymore. They're coming for me. Take her, please. Maya's arms had instinctively wrapped around the baby even as her mind screamed at her to run. Wait, you can't just. But the woman was already gone, disappearing around the corner like smoke, leaving Maya holding a 3-month-old baby girl who smelled of sour milk in desperate circumstances. For 2 days, Maya had tried. She'd gone to the police station, but the baby had no identifying information, and Maya's own situation made her terrified they'd take the infant and throw Maya into a system that had already chewed her up once. She'd asked other homeless people for help, but everyone had their own survival to worry about. She'd even stood outside a fire station for an hour, trying to work up the courage to leave the baby there, to walk away and let someone else handle this impossible situation. But every time she looked into those trusting brown eyes, every time those tiny fingers wrapped around hers, she couldn't do it. This baby deserved better than being abandoned twice in 1 week. The storm had started suddenly that evening, catching them exposed as Maya made her way toward a shelter on the east side that sometimes had space. The temperature had dropped 20 degrees in an hour, and the rain had turned vicious, driven by wind that cut through her thin jacket like it wasn't even there. The baby was crying now, really crying, the kind of wail that meant cold and hunger and discomfort that Maya couldn't fix. I know, baby girl, Maya whispered, trying to shield the infant with her own body as she pushed forward. I know. We're almost there. Just a little further. She didn't know if she was lying. The shelter was still miles away, and with each step, her legs felt heavier, her vision blurrier. Hypothermia, some distant part of her brain whispered, "You're going into hypothermia." The street she stumbled onto was different from the ones she usually traveled, lined with brownstones that probably cost more than she'd see in 10 lifetimes, with actual trees and cars that looked like they'd never seen a scratch. Rich People Street. The kind of place where cops got called on people like her just for existing. But Maya was beyond caring. Her knees buckled, and she found herself sitting on someone's stoop, hunched over the baby, trying to keep her warm with a body that had nothing left to give. The world was starting to fade at the edges, sounds becoming muffled, cold becoming a strange warmth that she knew was dangerous. The door behind her opened. "Jesus Christ," a man's voice said, sharp with shock. "How long have you been out here?" Maya tried to look up, to explain, to apologize for sitting on this stranger's steps, but words wouldn't come. All she could do was tighten her grip on the baby. James Mitchell had been working late in his home office, absorbed in quarterly reports for his tech company, when his security system alerted him to someone on his front steps. His first instinct had been annoyance, probably some drunk college kid from the party down the street. But when he pulled up the camera feed and saw the huddled figure, Something in the way she was curved protectively around something in her arms made him abandon his spreadsheets and rush to the door. What he found shattered something in his carefully constructed world. James was 42, a self-made millionaire who'd built a software empire from nothing, who'd lost his wife to cancer 3 years ago, who'd been raising their daughter Emma alone with a combination of determination and barely suppressed grief. He'd learned to function, to succeed, to maintain control. But control disappeared when he opened his door to find a teenage girl on the verge of collapse, clutching a baby who was turning blue from the cold. "Inside," he said, his voice taking on the commanding tone that made executives jump. "Now. Come on, I've got you." He reached for Maya, expecting resistance, but she was too far gone. He scooped her up, she weighed almost nothing, and carried both her and the baby into his home, kicking the door shut against the storm. His mind was already racing through logistics. Call 911, get blankets, warm water not hot, check for injuries, don't move them too quickly. "Emma," he shouted up the stairs. "I need your help." His 13-year-old daughter appeared at the top of the landing in her pajamas, her dark hair in a messy bun, her expression shifting from annoyed to alarmed in a heartbeat. "Dad, what? Get the guest room ready. Blankets, heating pad on low. Then grab the first aid kit and call Drive. Morrison, tell him it's an emergency." Emma hesitated only a second before sprinting into action. Whatever else could be said about James Mitchell's parenting, he'd raised a daughter who knew how to handle a crisis. Maya came to slowly, confusion giving way to panic when she realized she wasn't holding the baby anymore. She tried to sit up, tried to call out, but her body felt like it belonged to someone else. Hey, it's okay," a gentle voice said. A man appeared beside the bed, tall, maybe early 40s, with kind eyes and expensive-looking clothes. "The baby's fine. My daughter's with her right now. You're both safe. Maya's voice cracked. "I need to see her." "Of course. But first, let's get you stable. You were minutes from hypothermia. When's the last time you ate?" Maya couldn't remember. "Days blurred together when you were homeless." The man, James, he said his name was, didn't push. Instead, he helped her sit up slowly, wrapped another blanket around her shoulders, and brought her soup that tasted like heaven. While she ate, he told her that a doctor had checked both her and the baby, that they were going to be fine, that she didn't need to go anywhere tonight. "Why are you helping me?" Maya finally asked, the question that had been burning in her throat. James was quiet for a long moment. 3 years ago, my wife was dying. Cancer. We knew it was coming, but knowing doesn't prepare you. One night, near the end, we were leaving the hospital after a particularly brutal treatment. It was raining, and I was so focused on getting her to the car, on doing everything right, that I didn't notice she'd dropped her wedding ring in the parking lot. By the time we realized, we were home, and I couldn't leave her to go back. He paused, his eyes distant with memory. A homeless man found it. He could have sold it, it was worth enough to keep him fed for months. But he walked 3 miles to the hospital in the rain and turned it into the lost and found with a note describing where he'd found it. We got it back the next day. Sarah died 2 weeks later wearing that ring. James looked at Maya directly, and she saw tears in his eyes that matched her own. I never got to thank him. I went back to look, but I never found him. So when I saw you on my steps, protecting that baby with everything you had left, I thought, maybe this is how I say thank you. Maybe we're all just looking for ways to pass on the kindness we've been shown. Over the next 3 days, James's house became a sanctuary. Emma, initially shy, became fascinated with the baby, who they learned was named Sophia based on a tiny bracelet on her ankle. The teenager would sit for hours making faces at the infant, coaxing smiles and giggles that made everyone's hearts a little lighter. Maya slowly opened up about her situation, the foster care system, aging out with no support, the desperate months on the streets. She talked about Sophia's mother, about the impossible choice she'd faced, about her terror that she wasn't enough to save this baby. You walked through a storm to keep her safe, James said quietly. You almost died trying to protect her. That's not being not enough. That's being everything. James made calls, to lawyers, to social workers, to child services. The system moved slowly, but with his resources and connections, doors opened. Sophia's mother was found in a treatment facility, getting help but willingly signing over her parental rights to give her daughter a better chance. Maya, barely 18 herself, was too young and unstable to adopt, but James had an idea. "What if you both stayed?" he asked one evening as they sat in his living room, Sophia asleep in Maya's arms, Emma doing homework at the table. "I've got more room than I know what to do with. Emma's been happier this week than I've seen her in years. And Sophia needs people who love her. You don't even know me," Maya whispered, afraid to hope. "I know you carried a baby through a storm when you could barely walk yourself. I know you chose love over survival. That tells me everything I need to know." It wasn't simple. There were legal hurdles, therapy sessions, adjustments and arguments, and days when Maya was convinced she'd break something in this perfect world she'd stumbled into. But slowly, impossibly, they became a family, chosen, complicated, beautiful. James eventually adopted Sophia, with Maya as her legal guardian, a modern family that didn't fit any traditional mold but worked anyway. 2 years later, Maya stood in the doorway of her room, her actual room in a home that didn't disappear, watching Emma teach Sophia to stack blocks while James made dinner in the kitchen, singing off-key to music only he could hear. She thought about that night in the storm, about the moment she'd been ready to give up, about how close she'd come to missing all of this. Sometimes salvation comes not in grand gestures but in the simple act of opening a door. Sometimes family isn't about blood but about who shows up in the storm and decides to stay. And sometimes, the girl everyone sees as having nothing turns out to be carrying everything that matters.